The days that followed changed everything for Earth and for one homeless man who had simply done what he thought was right. High Commander Ethon addressed the entire galaxy from his flagship, broadcasting a message that reached every inhabited world within range. He spoke of Earth and its people, not with the contempt that most species reserve for Deathworlders, but with genuine respect that shocked everyone who heard it. "I went to Earth expecting savages," he declared. "I found something else entirely. I found a species that produces individuals capable of extraordinary compassion. A man with nothing gave everything to save a child who was not his own, not of his species, not of his world. He asked for nothing in return. He expected no reward. He simply saw a life that needed saving and risked his own to save it." The message continued, outlining the details of what had happened, describing how a homeless human had nearly died to keep an alien child alive through a freezing night. Ethan spoke of watching his child cling to this stranger, defending him against the soldiers who came to rescue her. He spoke of kneeling before a being with no power or status because that being had demonstrated a strength that warriors rarely possess. Earth and its people are hereby granted protected status in the Galactic Council, Ethon concluded. Any species that threatens this world will answer to the Kelthari Empire, not because humans are powerful, but because a species capable of producing such individuals must be preserved. They have something the rest of us have forgotten, and perhaps they can teach us to remember. The diplomatic fallout from this announcement kept governments busy for months. But Park Jung-soo cared nothing about politics. He sat in a small room in the abandoned building, holding Soren one last time before the child returned to the stars. The past few days had been strange and wonderful, filled with translators and officials and medical examinations that confirmed Jung-soo was recovering from his near-fatal night, but now it was time for goodbyes. And Jung-soo did not know how to say farewell to someone who had given him a reason to live. "You have to go with your father," he told Soren gently. "He loves you very much, and he came so far to find you. You belong with him." Soren's purple eyes were wet with tears that glowed faintly in the dim light. "I will miss you," the child said, Korean words now flowing more smoothly after days of practice. "You were kind to me when you did not have to be. You saved me when no one else would have." Jung-soo felt his own tears falling, but did not try to hide them. "You saved me too," he answered. "I had given up on everything before I found you. I thought my life was over. But you reminded me that I can still help, that I still matter. You gave me that gift." Ethon stood in the doorway, watching the exchange with emotions. He was still learning to understand. He had conquered worlds without feeling what he felt now. Watching his child say goodbye to a human who had become family in just a few days. "Jung-soo," the commander said, stepping forward, "I want to give you something. Anything you want, name it and it is yours. A home on any world in the Empire. Wealth beyond what humans can imagine. Citizenship among my people. Anything." Jung-soo thought about the offer for a long moment. Few weeks ago, he would have jumped at the chance to escape his life, to leave behind the cold streets and the hunger and the loneliness. But something had changed inside him. He had remembered who he was and what he was meant to do. "I want to stay here," he finally answered. "On Earth, in Seoul. But I want to help people, other homeless people, other children who have no one to protect them. I want to build something that will keep helping long after I'm gone." Ethon nodded slowly, understanding the request. "Then it will be done," he promised. "I will provide resources to build shelters and programs in your city. In your name, you will have everything you need to help your people. This is my gift to you, and my debt will still not be repaid." Soren reached into a small pouch and pulled out a crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The child pressed it into Jung-soo's weathered palm and closed his fingers around it. "This is a bonding crystal," Soren explained. Kelthari only give these to family. To people we love more than anything. You are my family now. Forever. No matter how far apart we are. Jiangsu looked at the crystal and felt its warmth spreading through his hand. He did not fully understand what it meant, but he understood that it was precious beyond measure. I will keep it always, he promised. And I will think of you every day. The farewell was difficult, but it was also filled with hope. Ethan carried Soren back to the landing craft, and the Kelthari fleet prepared to return to the stars. But before they left, the commander made one more announcement. Daryunji would become Earth's first ambassador to the Kelthari Empire, beginning a relationship that would transform human civilization. Trade agreements, technology sharing, and cultural exchange programs followed in the months ahead. Earth was no longer alone in the universe, and the species that had lived in isolation for so long now had powerful friends among the stars. 6 months later, Jiangsu stood in front of a brand new building in Seoul. A shelter that could house 300 homeless people at a time. It had been built with Kelthari resources, but designed by Korean architects who understood what the community needed. Myra was there too, now serving as the director of operations. Her food truck retired in favor of a full industrial kitchen that served hot meals every day. Other volunteers had joined them. Inspired by the story of a homeless man who saved an alien child, the building was named the Jiangsu Center for Human Compassion. Though Jiangsu had argued against using his name, he still felt like he had only done what anyone would do. But Ethan had insisted. Your name will remind people what humans are capable of, the commander had said. It will inspire them to be better. Jiangsu wore the bonding crystal on a simple cord around his neck, tucked under his shirt where it rested warm against his heart. Every evening, he sat in his small apartment above the shelter and waited for the message he knew would come. And every evening, his screen would light up with a transmission from across the galaxy. Soren's face appeared, older now, stronger, but still with those same purple eyes that had first looked at him with trust on that frozen night. Hello, father, the child would say in perfect Korean. How are you today? I miss you. And Jiangsu would smile and wave and tell stories about the people he was helping, about the lives being saved, about the legacy they were building together. The galaxy had expected humans to be dangerous, violent, unpredictable. They were not wrong about those things, but they have missed something important. Humans were also capable of love that crossed all boundaries, of sacrifice that asked for nothing in return, of compassion that could transform a homeless man into a hero, and sometimes that compassion could change the course of his story. Jiangsu looked at the crystal around his neck and thought about everything that had happened since that freezing night by the river. He had been nothing, had owned nothing, had expected nothing from the future except cold and hunger and eventual death. But he had found a freezing child in the snow, and he had done what any decent person would do. He had helped, and that simple act of kindness had rippled outward until it touched the stars in the end. That was the lesson the galaxy learned from humanity. Power and technology and weapons could conquer worlds, but only compassion could conquer hearts. And Park Jiangsu, a homeless man with nothing to his name, had proven that truth to an empire of stars. The room was frozen in a moment that could end in death or salvation, and everyone knew it. High Commander Ethan stood in the doorway, his massive armored body blocking the light from outside, his 4 eyes fixed on the ragged human who held his child. 500 soldiers waited behind him with weapons, ready to fire at the slightest command. Jiangsu did not move, did not speak, did not try to run or fight. He simply held the child against his chest and waited for whatever would happen. Next, Ethan took a step forward, and his soldiers raised their weapons higher. The tension in the room was so thick that Mira could barely breathe where she lay on the floor. Then the child did something no one expected. Soren released Jiangsu's neck and turned to face the towering figure of the Kelthari commander, but instead of reaching for the father who had traveled across stars to find a child. Soren grabbed Jong-Soo's hand and pulled it close. "No hurt him," the child said in broken Korean. Words learned just hours ago, but spoken with fierce determination. "He saved me. He's good." Ethan stopped, his rage dissolving into confusion as he heard his child speak in an alien language. He had prepared for every possible scenario. During his journey to Earth, he had prepared to fight armies, to negotiate with governments, to destroy anyone who had harmed his offspring. But he had not prepared for this. His child was defending the human, protecting the creature who should have been the enemy. "Soren," Ethan said, his voice softening despite his best efforts. "Come to me. You are safe now." Soren shook that small silver-haired head and pressed closer to Jong-Soo. "He kept me warm," the child continued, mixing Kelthari words with Korean in a way that made barely any sense. "He gave me food, he gave me blanket, he almost died to save me." "You cannot hurt him." Ethan felt something shift inside his chest, an understanding that began to replace the fear and anger he had carried across the galaxy. Looked more carefully at the human who held his child. Really looked this time. The creature was old and frail, dressed in torn clothing that offered no protection against the cold. The face was weathered by hardship and exposure, lined with wrinkles that spoke of a difficult life. This was not a warrior or a threat. This was barely even a survivor yet. This weak and broken being had somehow kept his child alive through a night that should have been fatal. Ethan signaled his soldiers to lower their weapons, and they obeyed with obvious reluctance. He walked slowly toward Jong-Soo, each step measured and careful, his size making the building feel small around him. Jong-Soo watched him approach but did not flinch or look away. The old teacher had faced angry parents and difficult students and administrators who wanted him gone. He had faced debt collectors and police and other homeless people who would kill for a warm blanket. He had faced death itself just last night when he gave away his own heat to save this child. He would not look away from one more challenge, no matter how terrifying. Ethan stopped directly in front of Jong-Soo and looked down at him from a height that would have intimidated any warrior in the galaxy. But Jong-Soo was not a warrior. He was a teacher and a protector and a man who had nothing left to lose. "You saved my child," Ethan said through his translator, his voice no longer commanding but questioning. Jong-Soo nodded slowly. "The child was freezing. I could not walk away. I could never walk away from a child in need. The night was cold enough to kill." Ethan pressed. "How did you keep Soren alive?" "I gave the child my blanket and my body heat," Jong-Soo answered simply. "It was all I had to give." Ethan's eyes moved to a device on his wrist, checking readings that Jong-Soo could not understand. What he saw made him go very still. "Your body temperature dropped to dangerous levels during the night," the commander said slowly. "You were dying. You nearly froze to death because you gave away your protection." Jong-Soo shrugged as if this was not important. "The child needed it more than I did." Dr. Yoonji had pushed her way into the building by now, recording everything on her phone, watching history unfold in front of her. She saw the massive alien commander studying the homeless man with an expression she could not read. She saw the child holding on to Jong-Soo's hand like a lifeline. She saw something changing in the dynamic between human and alien, something that words could not fully capture. Ethan reached out with one armored hand and touched the translator on his chest, switching it to a different setting when he spoke again. His words were broadcast to every soldier outside and every ship in orbit. "I came to this world expecting to find monsters," he said. "The galaxy warned me about humans, called them Deathworlders, said they were dangerous and violent and unpredictable. I was prepared to burn this planet to save my child." He paused and looked at Jong-Soo with all four of his alien eyes. "Instead, I found this being, a creature with nothing, no power, no weapons. No status in his own society. He found my child dying in the cold and gave everything he had to keep Soren alive. He almost died himself, and when my soldiers came to take the child away, he did not run or beg or try to bargain. He simply stood there, ready to face whatever came, because protecting my child was more important than his own life. Myra had gotten up from the floor by now, tears streaming down her face as she watched the Kelthari soldiers were silent. Their weapons hanging forgotten at their sides, Sethan removed his helmet, revealing a face that was strange and alien, but also somehow readable. His eyes showed something that looked like shame and something that looked like wonder. "I have conquered worlds," he continued. "I have led armies that stretched across starsystems. I have been called the greatest warrior of my generation. But I do not think I could do what this human did. To give everything when you have nothing, to risk death for a stranger. To protect life simply because it needed protecting. This is a kind of strength I do not possess." And then High Commander Ethan, conqueror of a dozen worlds, leader of the most powerful fleet in the quadrant, did something no Kelthari commander had done in 10,000 years. He knelt before Park Jong-soo, a homeless man with nothing to his name, and bowed his head in respect. The gesture sent shockwaves through the Kelthari fleet and through the human observers and through a galaxy that was watching through long-range sensors. The Supreme Commander was kneeling before a Death Worlder, before a human, before a creature that most species considered dangerous and primitive, and he was doing it because that human had earned his respect. In a way no warrior ever had. Jong-soo looked down at the kneeling alien and did not know what to say. He had never been anyone important, had never done anything that others considered remarkable. He was just a man who could not ignore a child in need. "Please stand up," he finally said. "I only did what any good person would do. Your child needed help, and I was there. That is all." Ethan rose to his feet and met Jong-soo's eyes with something like friendship forming in his gaze. "That is not all," the commander replied. "That is everything, and I will not forget it." The world had changed overnight, and humanity was not ready for what was happening above their heads. News channels broadcast images of the alien fleet orbiting Earth. 200 massive warships that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Military bases across the planet went to high alert, and governments held emergency meetings to discuss a threat they had no power to stop. Message from High Commander Ethan played on repeat. His demand for the return of his child, creating panic and confusion everywhere. No one knew what child he was talking about, and no one knew how to find an alien among billions of humans. Dr. Choi Yoonji was a government liaison who specialized in crisis management. Though nothing in her training had prepared her for contact with extraterrestrial life, she stood in a crowded command center in Seoul, watching experts argue about how to respond to the alien ultimatum. Some wanted to fight, some wanted to surrender, and some simply wanted to pray. Yoonji knew that none of these options would save anyone. The only chance was to find the missing child and return it before the aliens lost patience. "We need to search every hospital and shelter," she suggested. "The child cannot survive in this cold without help. Someone must have found it." A military general shook his head. "We are already searching, but we do not even know what this child looks like." The message gave us no description. Yoonji thought about the problem from a different angle. Alien child would be obvious to anyone who saw it, which meant that whoever found the child was likely hiding it. But why would anyone hide an alien child when returning it could save the entire planet unless they did not know the world was in danger? "Focus on areas with limited access to media," she ordered. "Homeless populations, isolated communities, anyone who might not have seen the broadcast in the abandoned building across the city." Jong-soo was teaching the child how to fold paper into shapes. He had learned origami as a young man, and had taught it to countless students over the years. The child watched with fascination as his wrinkled hands turned flat paper into birds and flowers and boats. Small blue fingers tried to copy his movements, and Jiangsu gently guided them through each fold. Myra returned from a supply run with food and blankets, and a worried expression on her face. She had seen the news and heard the alien message playing from every screen in the city, and she finally understood what was happening. The binge child Jiangsu had saved was not just any lost youngster, but the offspring of a powerful alien commander who was threatening to destroy Earth. Uncle Jiangsu, she said carefully, sitting down next to him. I need to tell you something important. She explained everything she had learned. Watching his face as he processed the impossible information, Joss looked down at the child in his lap. The small being who had called him father just that morning. Purple eyes looked back at him with complete trust and affection. So the child's real father is looking for the child, Jiangsu said slowly. And he will hurt people if we do not give the child back. He will hurt everyone, Myra corrected. Those ships have weapons that can destroy cities. We have no way to fight them. Jiangsu was silent for a long moment, his mind working through emotions he did not fully understand. Part of him wanted to hide the child forever, to keep this precious life safe from a galaxy that seemed cruel and violent. But another part of him knew that a child belonged with its parent, and no amount of love could replace that bond. We should contact the authorities, he finally said. Tell them we have the child they're looking for. Myra nodded, relieved that he understood the situation. I will make some calls, find out who to talk to, but Uncle Jiangsu, they might not let you see the child again after this. Jiangsu smiled sadly and stroked the child's silver hair. I know, but keeping the child from a worried parent is wrong. No matter how much I want to hold on. Before Myra could make any calls, the decision was taken from their hands high above Earth. The Kelthari had finished their planetary scan and located the beacon signal specialist. Vaithara reported the exact location to High Commander Ethan, and he immediately ordered a landing party to retrieve his child. 500 of the Empire's finest soldiers, prepared for deployment, each one wearing armor that could withstand nuclear weapons and carrying guns that could level buildings. Ethan himself led the mission because he would not trust anyone else with his child's safety. The warships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, visible to everyone in the city below. People screamed and ran as the massive vessels blocked out the sun, casting shadows that stretched for miles. The landing craft touched down in a park near the abandoned building, and Kelthari soldiers poured out in perfect formation. They moved through the streets with weapons raised, scanning every structure for the beacon signal. Human military forces arrived to intercept them, tanks and soldiers and helicopters creating a barrier around the alien position. For a terrible moment, it seemed like war would begin right there in the heart of Soldier. Yunji pushed through the chaos, shouting for everyone to hold fire, desperate to prevent a massacre that would doom the entire human race. I am a government representative, she yelled in English, hoping the aliens could understand. We want to help you find the child. Please do not attack. Ethan emerged from his landing craft, towering over the humans around him, his 4 eyes glowing with barely controlled rage. He looked at the small woman who dared approach him and spoke through a translation device. Where is my child? He demanded. Tell me now and your city may survive. Yunji swallowed her fear and answered honestly. We do not know yet, but we are searching. Please give us time. Time was something Ethan had run out of. He pushed past the human negotiator and led his soldiers toward the beacon signal, which grew stronger with every step. They found the abandoned building within minutes, and the soldiers surrounded it while Ethan approached the front door inside. Jiangsu heard the commotion and looked out a dusty window. He saw the alien soldiers, saw the weapons, saw the massive figure in command armor walking toward his hiding place. His heart pounded with fear. But he did not run. Running would only delay the inevitable and might put the child in danger instead. He picked up the small blue-skinned child and held the tiny body close to his chest. "Your father is here," he whispered. "Your real father. He came all this way to find you. He must love you very much." The child looked at him with those purple eyes and seemed to understand more than any child should. Small arms wrapped around Jong-su's neck, and a small voice whispered back, "You are father too." Jong-su felt his heart break and heal at the same time. The door exploded inward, and Kelthari soldiers flooded the building with weapons raised. Myra screamed and dropped to the floor with her hands over her head. Jong-su stood perfectly still, holding the child, refusing to show fear, even though terror was flooding through his body. The soldiers parted, and High Commander Ethan entered the room. He saw his child in the arms of a ragged human, and his first instinct was to tear the creature apart for daring to touch his offspring. But the child did not look afraid. The child looked safe, and the child was holding on to the human like he was the only protection in the universe. Ethan paused, his rage meeting confusion. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he did not know what to do. The wind cut through the streets of Seoul like a blade made of ice, and Park Jong-su pulled his thin jacket tighter around his body as he walked beneath the overpass near the Han River. He had lived in this spot for 3 years now, ever since he lost his job as an elementary school teacher, and his wife left him with nothing but debt and shame. Concrete above his head blocked some of the snow, but it did nothing to stop the cold that crept into his bones every single night. Jong-su was 58 years old, and his body reminded him of this fact constantly. During winter, he arranged his cardboard sheets against the Daeof concrete pillar and wrapped himself in the 3 blankets he had collected over the years. One was a thermal blanket he found in a donation bin last spring. It was his most treasured possession because it kept him alive on nights like this one. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees below zero, and even the stray cats that usually kept him company had disappeared to find warmer place. Jong-su opened his small plastic bag and looked at his dinner, a half-eaten sandwich from the trash behind a convenience store and a bottle of water that was already starting to freeze. He ate slowly, trying to make the food last, trying to trick his stomach into feeling full. He thought about his students from years ago, wondering where they were now, wondering if any of them ever thought about the teacher who used to bring them candy on test days. Those memories felt like they belonged to another person, someone who had a home and a purpose and people who cared whether he lived or did. Jong-su finished his sandwich and prepared to sleep when he heard a strange sound coming from the snow near the riverbank. It was a soft whimpering noise, like a wounded animal trying to cry for help. He hesitated because leaving his shelter meant losing precious body heat. But the sound continued, and something in his chest would not let him ignore it. Pushed himself up on aching knees and walked toward the noise, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. What he found made him stop and stare in confusion. A child lay curled in the snow, trembling so violently that the small body seemed to vibrate. But this was no ordinary child. The skin was pale blue, almost the color of ice itself, and the hair was silver like moonlight on water. The child wore strange clothing that looked expensive but offered no protection against the cold. Thin fabric covered the small frame, and Jong-su could see that the child was dying. He did not understand what he was looking at, but understanding did not matter in that moment. A child was freezing to death, and Jong-su had spent his whole life protecting children. He knelt in the snow and gathered the small body into his arms. The child weighed almost nothing, and the skin felt colder than the air around. Then Jong-su carried the child back to his shelter. beneath the overpass and laid the small body on his cardboard bed. He removed his thermal blanket and wrapped it around the child. Then he removed his jacket and added it to the layers. The child opened eyes that glowed faintly purple, and fear filled those strange, beautiful eyes. The child spoke in sounds Jiangsu could not understand, a language that seemed to flow like music but carried no meaning he could grasp. "Shi," Jiangsu whispered. "You are safe now, little one. I will not hurt you." He did not know if the child understood his words, but he hoped his tone would communicate what language could not. The child continued to tremble, and Jiangsu realized that blankets alone would not be enough. He lay down next to the child and pulled the small body against his chest. Sharing his own heat despite having so little to spare, he could feel his own temperature dropping as the cold child absorbed his warmth. But he did not pull away. He had nothing in this world except his life. And if his life could save this strange little being, then perhaps his life had meaning after all hours passed in the darkness. And Jiangsu drifted between waking and sleeping, his body growing numb from the cold he was giving away. The child gradually stopped trembling, and the blue skin slowly became less pallid. Jiangsu noticed a small device strapped to the child's thin wrist, blinking with a weak light that reminded him of a heartbeat. He did not know what it was, but he left it alone because it seemed important. Around midnight, the child's eyes opened again, and this time the fear had faded. The child looked up at Jiangsu's weathered face and seemed to study him with intelligence far beyond what any human child would show. Small fingers reached up and touched Jiangsu's cheek, feeling the rough stubble and the deep wrinkles carved by years of hardship. Jiangsu smiled despite his exhaustion, and the child's lips curved upward in response. They could not speak to each other, but in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. Jiangsu was giving everything he had to save a life, and the child was grateful to be saved. The old teacher thought about all the children he had taught over the years, all the small faces that looked up at him expecting guidance and protection. This child was different in every physical way, but the need was the same. Children needed adults who would put them first, who would sacrifice comfort and safety to keep them alive. Jiangsu had failed at so many things in his life. He had failed to keep his job, failed to save his marriage, failed to maintain his dignity in society. But tonight, he would not fail this child. He held the small body close and whispered old Korean lullabies his mother used to sing, songs about mountains and rivers and brave heroes who protected the weak. The child listened with those glowing purple eyes and gradually relaxed into sleep. Jiangsu stayed awake as long as he could, watching over his unexpected guest, wondering where this strange child had come from and whether anyone was looking for such a precious life. His own body was growing dangerously cold, and he knew he was risking death by giving away his heat and his blankets. But when he looked at the peaceful face of the sleeping child, he felt something he had not felt in years. He felt like a teacher again, like a protector, like someone who mattered. The night dragged on, and Jiangsu finally succumbed to exhaustion. His eyes closed, and his breathing became shallow as his body struggled against the cold. He dreamed of warm classrooms and laughing students and spring days when cherry blossoms fell like pink snow in his dreams. He was young again, and the world was full of hope and possibility. He did not know if he would wake up, but he knew he had done the right thing when dawn finally broke over the frozen city. Pale sunlight crept beneath the overpass and touched the two figures, huddled together on cardboard and concrete. The child stirred first, warmth finally restored after the long, terrible night. Purple eyes opened and looked at the old man who had saved a life at the risk of his own. Child sat up slowly and touched Jiangsu's face, and the old man's eyes fluttered open for a moment. They simply looked at each other as the morning light grew stronger around them. Then, the child spoke a single word in Jiangsu's own language, a word learned from somewhere deep inside. a word that carried all the gratitude and love a small heart could hold. Father? Jiangsu felt tears freeze on his cheeks as he smiled at the strange and wonderful child who had just given him a reason to keep living. The morning brought warmth from the sun, but also brought new problems that Jiangsu had not expected. The strange blue-skinned child was awake and alert, but also hungry and confused in a world that made no sense. Jiangsu shared his frozen water bottle and a piece of bread he had saved. Watching as the child ate with small, careful bites, the purple eyes never left his face. As if the child was afraid he might disappear, Jiangsu decided he needed help. But he also knew he could not simply walk into a hospital with an alien child. The authorities would take the child away, and he did not trust anyone to protect this little one the way he could. He thought about his options and remembered Yu Mira, the young woman who ran a small food truck near the river. She came every Wednesday to give free meals to the homeless people in the area. And she had always been kind to Jiangsu, never looked at him with disgust or pity, only with genuine warmth that made him feel human again. Wednesday was today, and Jiangsu made a decision. He wrapped the child in all his blankets and carried the small body against his chest as he walked through the frozen streets. People stared at the homeless man carrying a bundle, but no one looked closely enough to see what was inside. The city was busy with morning commuters who had no time to worry about the forgotten people who lived in the shadows. Mira's food truck was parked in its usual spot, steam rising from the cooking surface as she prepared hot soup and rice for her weekly charity work. She was a woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and short, black hair, and she smiled when she saw Jiangsu approaching. Uncle Jiangsu, she called out, using the respectful term even though they were not related. You look terrible today. Come get some hot food. Jiangsu walked up to the truck and leaned close so only she could hear him. I need your help, he whispered. I found something last night, and I do not know what to do. Myra's smile faded as she saw the serious expression on his face. She looked at the bundle in his arms and gestured for him to come around to the back of the truck when he unwrapped the blankets and showed her the child. Her eyes went wide with shock. The blue skin and silver hair and glowing purple eyes were impossible to explain. Yet here they were, right in front of her. What is this? She breathed, reaching out to touch the child's cheek. Where did you find this child? In the snow by the river, Jiangsu answered. The child was dying from cold. I kept the child warm through the night. I do not know where the child came from, but I know I cannot let anyone harm this little one. Myra was silent for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities that all seemed equally impossible. She had seen science fiction movies and read stories about aliens, but she never believed such things could be real yet. Here was proof that the universe was far stranger than anyone imagined. We need to find a safe place, she finally said. I know an abandoned building a few blocks from here. It was a restaurant before it closed down. It still has a kitchen and running water. She closed her food truck early that day, something she had never done before, and led Jiangsu and the child through back alleys to a 3-story building with boarded windows. The door was locked, but Mara had a key because she sometimes stored supplies here inside. The building was dusty but dry and protected from the wind. Mara turned on a space heater she kept for emergencies, and the room slowly began to warm. The child sat on an old mattress and watched everything with curious eyes, still holding on to Jiangsu's hand. Far above Earth, in the cold darkness of space, a massive warship emerged from hyperspace with a flash of light that satellites detected, but could not explain. High Commander Ethan stood on the bridge of the Kelthari flagship, his tall, powerful body rigid with barely contained fury and fear. His child was missing, lost on a primitive world after pirates attacked the diplomatic vessel. The escape pod had been tracked to the 3rd planet in this unremarkable solar system, A world called Earth by its inhabitants. Ethan had studied the reports about humans during the journey, and what he learned did not ease his worry. These creatures were what the galaxy called Deathworlders, beings from a planet so hostile that evolution had forged them into survivors of terrifying capability. They had built civilizations from nothing, split atoms, walked on their moon, and were constantly fighting wars among themselves. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and they had his child. All ships maintain formation, Ethan commanded, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his heart. Scan the planet for any trace of the beacon signal. His fleet of 200 warships spread around Earth like a net, their weapons capable of destroying cities in seconds. Ethan did not want war with this primitive world, but he would burn every continent to ash if that was what it took to save his child. The Kelthari were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors, a species that valued strength above all else. Ethan had won 100 battles and expanded the empire across a dozen star systems, but all his power meant nothing if he could not save the small life that called him Father Specialist. Vathara worked frantically at her console, filtering through millions of signals to find the one that mattered. The beacon on Soren's wrist was damaged, its signal weak and intermittent, but it was still transmitting after hours of searching. She found it. "High Commander," she reported, her voice tight with relief. "I have located the beacon. It is coming from a city on the eastern coast of the largest landmass. The humans call it Sol." Ethan moved to her station and studied the coordinates, his 4 eyes narrowing with focus. "Life signs," he demanded. "Is Soren alive?" Vathara checked her readings twice before answering. "Yes, Commander, Soren is alive, but the beacon shows proximity to another life form, a human adult." The fear in Ethan's chest transformed into something darker. A human had his child. A Deathworlder was holding the heir to the Kelthari Empire. He did not know if the human was helping or hurting, protecting or threatening, but he would find out soon enough. "Prepare a broadcast to the planet," he ordered. "Inform these humans that they have something that belongs to me, and they will return it immediately, or they will face consequences beyond their imagination." The communications officer hesitated. "Commander, should we not attempt diplomacy first? The child may be safe." Ethan turned his fierce gaze on the officer, and the younger Kelthari shrank back. "My child is in the hands of aliens on a hostile world," Ethan growled. "Every moment we waste on diplomacy is a moment Soren spends in danger. Send the broadcast now." Within minutes, every screen and radio on Earth crackled with the same message, translated into every major language by Kelthari technology. "People of Earth, I am High Commander Ethan of the Kelthari Empire. You have taken something precious from me. Return my child immediately and unharmed, or your world will learn what happens when you make enemies of the stars." Jiangsu did not hear the broadcast because the abandoned building had no working television or radio. He sat with the child in his lap, teaching simple Korean words while Myra prepared a warm meal in the old kitchen. The child was learning fast, pointing at objects and repeating their names with an accent that was strange but understandable. Felt something growing in his chest that he had not felt in years. It was love, pure and unexpected, for this small being that the universe had placed in his care. He did not know that armies were gathering above his head. He did not know that the most powerful military commander in the galaxy was searching for the child in his arms. He only knew that he had found purpose again, and he would protect this child with everything he had, which was not much, but it would have to be enough.